It's still September 12th, 2023. While I got the camera going, I thought I'd share a few thoughts on alcohol writing. I don't think alcohol helps anyone's writing, not directly. I've experimented with it. I can tell you that as my writing goes, the more I drink, the less clear my writing becomes. I usually write out stuff, at least the first draft, by hand, and you really can't write by hand after a certain amount of drinks. And typing is even harder, so can't type after even fewer drinks. And plus your thoughts are just as garbled and muddy as your speech is. So, in my experience, drinking does not help your writing. There was a time back in the 19th century, some writers, I think probably Paul Verlaine and Arthur Rimbaud and similar ones of that generation, believed in dissolution of the senses. I can see that when you're young, dissolution of the senses can be an interesting way to look at things in a new light. It can be, you can learn to see things differently. I don't think it'll last very long. I think this is something that the young can do, or young will do, and I think the young will inevitably be drawn to it. So I don't think that's really going to help. And there are a lot of writers who have been destroyed by alcohol. Hemingway said that he believed Fitzgerald's gift for writing had been destroyed by alcohol. Fitzgerald died at, I think, age 40, heart failure brought on by alcoholism. Hemingway was always a heavy drinker, but he didn't let it get in the way of his writing. His writing was number one to him, and he controlled it, just as he controlled his writing. As I understand, he was a rather disciplined writer. When he was writing for the Kansas City Star in Paris in the early 20s, he would get up 4 hours before he had to be at work, something like 4 a.m., and he'd go to this little attic room in the apartment house where he stayed, and he had a wood stove, and he sharpened 20 pencils, and he'd write for 4 hours, and then at the end of those 4 hours he'd put his pencils away, put his writing away, and go to work. And after work he'd go to the races or bullfights or whatever. Thomas Mann, I think, if I remember correctly, I saw Hunter Thompson talking about Thomas Mann on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson one time. He was talking about how Thomas Mann was such a disciplined writer. And I'd read this before somewhere, that, and I think this comes from Mann's early life, I believe in the banking industry, when he had a regular job to go to. And apparently, after he left banking and he went to writing, he still kept that same discipline. Because from what I understand, he would get up in the morning, dress, shave, clean himself, and have breakfast, just as if he was going to work at the bank. He would walk down the steps to his living room or wherever it was that he wrote. He'd write for 4 hours. Then he'd go to lunch for an hour, go back to his writing for another 4 hours, and at the end of that, he would head back upstairs, take off his suit, and he was done for the day. So, I think you'll find that in the world of writing, people who have discipline like that are much more successful at writing than people who do not. There are exceptions. Hunter Thompson himself was an exception, as I understand it. I understand that when he was covering an event, he got caught by the spirit or something. He had an idea. He just jot it down on a restaurant napkin, even if the napkin was cloth. Then he'd go jam it into a fax machine and try to send it back to John Winter at Rolling Stone or whoever the editor was, and have them piece it together into a story. Another one was wrote haphazardly, was not known for his discipline. As I understand it, was Henry Miller, who wrote Tropic of Cancer. He apparently would write for 2 or 3 days and go be drunk for 2, 3, 4 days, come back for another day. Just back and forth. At least that's the what I've read about. Poe, I think, everybody thinks Poe was an alcoholic, but from what I understand, he was more of a binge drinker. He might go a year without touching alcohol, then he'd be drunk for a week, and he'd regret that, and he'd go back to being sober for a year, and then he'd be drunk for a week again, or however long it was. I think that's how he eventually died. He was in Baltimore, and he was the victim of what was called cooping. Basically, an election was going on, somebody bought him a drink, bought him several drinks, had him go enough that he would go vote for whoever their candidate was. Then they bring him back. This is typical of what they did with a lot of people. That they take him back, put other clothes on him, get him a little bit drunker, take him to another voting place, have them give him a false name, he'd vote again for their candidate, and they would keep stuff in the ballot box like that. That's an old practice called cooping, and it's believed, at least one theory, that's how Poe died, that he got so drunk during one bout of that he basically fell asleep in a ditch full of water, or with some water, and got pneumonia and died about a week later, if I recall the story correctly. Stephen King had a big problem with drugs and alcohol when he started out, and I've read, and it was probably in his book on writing, though it might have been somewhere else, that he stayed drunk so much or high that he doesn't even remember writing Cujo, which is a rather thick book. So he had to be pretty smashed for a long time not to remember writing something like that. I think you'll find that there are a lot more cases of writers who have been ruined by alcohol than have been saved by it. I really don't know. I know the biographies of quite a few writers. I don't know of anyone who really made a career of writing while drunk. There are some young authors who, young poets who drank heavily, wrote for a while. I think Oliver Rimbaud was one. But then he stopped writing, I think, at age 19. And he went on with the rest of his life, I think, eventually becoming a gun runner down in Africa, a coffee merchant, and God knows what else down there. But I think all in all, I'm not against alcohol. God knows, and everybody who's known me, particularly people in the city of Corpus Christi, a lot of people in Birmingham, Washington also, quite a few people in Washington, D.C. Yeah, quite a few people around different places that knew me as a heavy drinker. I don't do that anymore. I don't drink heavily like I used to. Now I have about a glass or two of wine every night. I've had my experiences with alcohol, good and bad, and I can tell you it's real easy to do something very, very stupid while drunk. And I'm not going to say don't drink, partly because of the hypocritical of me, and I refuse to be a hypocrite. I'm gonna be a lot of things, but I find being intimate particularly disgusting, and I won't do it for myself. But I think alcohol, like all else, should be taken in moderation. I believe the saying in Latin is omnes in moderatio, everything in moderation. Um, it's just not a gift to writing. Well, a gift for writing, you probably need to look at self-discipline more than anything else. You're going to write better with a clear head than you can with one that's been, I don't want to say cluttered, but that's been soaked in Cabernet Sauvignon or in vodka or bourbon or any number of things. I think the only way alcohol is maybe good for writing is indirectly. Through alcohol, you get a lot of wild experiences that you can write about. You get a lot of wild experience with life. And if you have some degree of self-discipline and some common sense, you won't kill yourself. You won't kill others. You can live through it, as I have. You can learn to control your drinking, as I have. And you'll get to an age where it's just getting drunk is not as entertaining as it was. I love to get drunk in my early 20s. I love to get drunk in my early 30s. I get drunk in my early 40s, for that matter. Not anymore. It's just not for me. I like to have a glass of wine every night to relax and to chill out, and that's about it. I really don't have a desire to get shit-faced anymore. I really don't want to. So, what I'll say about drinking and writing, I don't think they go together. I think you should do it in moderation, if at all. I think you need to keep your wits about you. I think the best thing you can have for your writing, based on the biographies of, I don't know how many writers I've read, and on my own personal experience, I think the best thing you can do for your writing is have a measure of self-discipline. You don't have to be rigid about it, like a Marine Corps drill instructor, but you can have a degree of self-discipline enough to benefit your writing without all that much effort. Well, okay, yeah, you got to have some effort, but it's going to take something. It's going to take some kind of stamina, some kind of self-discipline in your mind, but you have to keep your mind focused on your goal, and you can't keep your mind focused at all if it's soaked in bourbon or Cabernet or beer or whatever your adult beverage of choice is. So, that's all I'm going to say for tonight on the subject of alcohol. Take care, and I'll see you next time I feel in the mood to take one of these things. Have a good evening.